terms of the needs of humans and humankind. May they live in peace and freedom. Amen. It was some kind of a defensive position, foxhole or bunker. But it's not designed to cover the field of fire. Those would be on this side. Well, if it hits, your problem is, and that's why on 913 and 909, where they had the tremendous aerial and then artillery bombardments, they survived. If you're dug in 5 to 6 feet in the ground, it's only a direct hit that's going to kill you. So that if you are dug in and you stay down when they're shelling, your chances of survival, it's a miracle what you can go through.
Was 5 to 6 feet difficult?
Yes, well, you can appreciate trying to look at this rock, and the ground was frozen. So you often didn't get to that depth. This defilade position was one that was manufactured by the Germans in connection with their defense. The Germans, for some reason, weren't shelling the billets. And I heard someone say that there was some kind of an understanding. Unless we were seen, they didn't fire.
Oh.
So there, even in the rules of war, there's some equity involved somehow, fortunately.
Yeah.
Yes, I was surprised at how it stood out. Yeah, well, maybe.
Sorry, Hugh, where are we?
We're on the top of Gorgolesco now, and I thought you could see Belvedere. We can't. We'll move down this trail to the pasture where we saw the horses, and we'll look back on Belvedere. Boy, I think that's the only way we're going to get through the fence if we want to. They have really, whoever owns this land now doesn't want anybody trespassing on it. I don't think the last time I was here, it was a barbed wire fence and you could pull the barbed wire around. Obviously, the landowner doesn't want us to trespass, but when I was talking about the tree, see the oak tree that's just sticking up there in that pasture, that's the tree that we call the Evans Embry tree that we argue over, and it's in a photograph with C Company coming back up. We went down to get our packs and then came back up online. And that's the time when they'd taken the blankets out of our packs in order to wrap the dead. And I was furious because here I had a platoon of about 30 people then who had no blankets, and this was February and there was snow on the ground. And I thought that was a serious mistake on the part of the Quartermaster Corps that was responsible for taking care of the dead, to take care of the dead rather than the living. And I've always remembered that the living are the ones that you must really pay attention to. But we were down here, and the attack, there were machine guns set, that forest wasn't there, and the machine gun set shooting up to the high ground that we were at, well, that we just came over. And that's where the German bunkers were. And I was able to see where they were firing, and I believe I was just over that ridge down there, and I could see there was an American soldier crawling below what then I could recognize was a bunker. So I thought, if he's there, I can go there. So I foolishly tried to fire some rifle grenades. There were a grenade that went on your end of your rifle would go further than you could throw a grenade. but nowhere as near this distance, so they fell short out here in the field. But then I decided we could come up through this field, so I took off running up to this fellow that was up below this bunker. The last time I was here, I thought I found it, but I think it's just on the other side of the fence and we can't get there. And then moved on over that hill, and that hill, where it's overgrown today, was not. It was barren at the time. And mortar shells started to come in as I began to move across the hill. So I ran to the other side. Somebody popped his head up, and somehow I hit him with my machine pistol, which is a .45 caliber weapon that goes put, 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 put like that. And it ran down and jumped in his trench. And then there was a machine gun firing down. This draw goes down to Gaggio, Montana. And some of the Germans that had been captured here tried to escape and started to run down this draw. So the two Germans in there had given up, surrendered to me. I took their machine gun and fired on the prisoners trying to escape. And that's the extent of my memory. And then the troops started to move through us. And the thing that, another vivid moment that I remember, as they came over the hill, the soldiers behind me, and I was in the trench on the following hill, Germans came up with their hands up all over the place. There must have been 30 or 40 Germans in foxholes there, and why they didn't finish me off going over the hill is just the luck of the draw is what it amounts to.
What time of day was that?
We'll go back up here. I don't think I can find that.
Was it still dark when all that was happening?
No, this was dawn.
It was dawn.
This is dawn.
So you started at 11?
We crossed the line of departure at 11.
Yeah.
We were up here before dawn. That's when we were down in defilade there. And then when the machine guns came up and set up and started to fire, and as this light began to come, it was before the light was here when I was up with the machine guns. I stayed with them until I could see, and then went back down. So it would have been maybe a half an hour after first light.
It was winter, so it would have been.
Yeah, it was
late.
right late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe
by
it
the
was
time I got up here, the sun was fully up. It was
even
bright.
8.
Yeah, something like that.
What happened immediately before before you took all these actions?
Well, my friend Bob Fisher had been killed, and he had been shot through the chest with machine guns, and machine gun bullets. And I had come on him, and I saw he had the sucking wound, and there was a man next to him, and I just took my bayonet and cut the back out of his jacket and tried to make a compression bandage that would try and control the breathing. But he died when I was doing that. And many years later, I didn't realize that the man was Mac McKenzie that was next to him. And he and I, on one of these trips, realized that that was the circumstance. And our captain had been hurt by I didn't know that until afterwards, his legs blown off, and there had been some other soldiers killed. And that's when I went up to the machine gun and saw what I thought was an opportunity, and we came up here, and that resulted in the action that actually we took the top of Gorgolesco then. I remember coming back down, and right through here, B Company was ahead of us. As was pointed out today, we were coming up in a single column, following each other by regiment, and B Company was in the lead. They came up in this draw here and took a terrible, terrible beating. They were caught by machine gun fire and shells. Then I remember there were Savage brothers, and one of the Savage brothers, his head was blown open like a watermelon out here. And his brother came by later and said, "That's my brother." I mean, it was open then. It was a field like the field. We could see through the fence, and this is where the Germans started to run down. Here's the remnant. I'm not sure that this is the right one, but this is, I think it goes further. I think this level, I don't think it's a trail, I think it is the remnant of a trench that ran around the nose here and off in this direction, and this was clear when I came over the top. A German put his head up, and I fired from a waist like a real Western pistol jockey and somehow hit the guy, and then came down in this trench. And it wraps just enough around the hill so that you can see that little gully, and it was open like the fields. Now you can look across there and see that hill. That hill was not overgrown the way it is now, and when the troops started coming through and I moved out, the Germans gave up. They stood up in their holes and surrendered. And that whole hill, it was like it was all standing up. And I realized what an idiot I was.
So Hugh, did any of your men follow you, or was it just...
Yes, some of the men followed me, yeah. I don't know, I wasn't looking backward.
You're still that way.
I'm afraid so. I think we better head down because we're late.
Okay.
Hugh,
Yes.
when you're doing all this, what were you thinking?
I was mad. I was mad. They'd killed Fisher. That's where anger serves a very useful purpose in our personality makeup, presumably. Sometimes anger is right, sometimes anger is wrong. It's hard to tell a difference. And see, the Germans are trying to guess where the heck you're going to come from. Are you going to come up from Gazi? Are you going to come up from here? You really don't know. You can walk this trail now all the way to Della Torraccia.
Can you?
Yes. And there's a beautiful little chapel. What is it? Campagna di Rancheras is over that hill and down the next one. And when I talked about a tank being up here drawing fire, it was just over that hill. It was on the other side. But we're going to have to move out at a pretty good pace, or we're going to... I'll tell you, oh, maybe I'm on mic, you might... Yeah. Uncle Evan was...
You have to keep it clean, right?
With Uncle Evan, impossible. Uncle Evan graduated, got his doctorate degree in nuclear physics. He describes event, and about 20 years later, Evan was at a scientific conference in San Francisco, and the man introducing him got up and said the tale. Of course, he got a standing ovation at the conference.
Not for the Marines.
No. And he sent a letter. Debbie, he sent a letter that he claims Mother wrote, and my brother used to take off on my mother in the most wonderful way. And we have to read it. Remind me. Yes, I have it. It is classic El Madre. She went around the world and by you know, not with tours, by herself. And she lived with families in India and in Japan and in several parts of the world. She was quite a lady.
She might even, I don't know, I don't think she'd ever actually told us. But when she took the race.
I don't think so. I think you're seeing a ridge before. I don't think you're seing the top.
Want any warm shook up Coke?
Thank you.